Should you use code that ChatGPT writes? Should you use code that you find on GitHub, on GitLab, on Bitbucket, wherever? What code should you use in your own business? The code you write, the code somebody else writes. I'll be teaching you a few techniques that you need to think about before building in the code. My name is Ali. I'm an entrepreneur. I've started 4 businesses and I've been a content creator for 7 years plus. At this channel, I'll be sharing my knowledge with you. So let's go. So let's start about finding the open source code that you want to build in. You could use ChatGPT. ChatGPT can generate the code, but then you're responsible for maintaining that code. Fully you, until we have a version in the upcoming future that can do that for you. So that's probably 2-3 years away. Before that, I think you're best off with finding some code in the open source community that you could use. My personal favorite is AwesomeList. AwesomeList is a great type of collection that you could find on GitHub, the largest source code base out there. And here with AwesomeList, they have many lists. So this is a community-driven collection of resources for a certain topic. So in this example, we're going to be taking text editors. Your startups or your company, they need a text editor. So how can you find the best resources for text editors? So what I usually do, I go on Google and I write AwesomeList rich text editors. You see, I've already searched that. And then my first hit is AwesomeList. Let me go on that. It's been recently updated 5 days ago. So it's a good list, has a bunch of stars. This is a good example. And then from here, I would start by, reading this list. There are some that are for jQuery. If you ever use that, I don't really recommend those. For Angular, the most hated framework in the webs. And then for React, so I'm interested in those projects. And I'm going to show you how you can go into a project, dig in a little bit about how good is this project? Who's maintaining it? Is it good for my company to do it? So in order to do that, you need to think about a couple of things. First is how many maintainers are there? Is it a project that one guy called Al-Jumaidi wrote? Or is it a project backed by a company like, let's say, Vercel or such? I mean, if it's backed by a company, your chances are a bit better because certain individuals, they start an open source project. It's basically for them, it's just a test. They want to test out building code in public and then they kill it. Let's look at one example like that. I'm going to open one of those. Let's go into something like AlloyEditor. And this has been updated 9 months ago. It's been used by 237 people and there are 51 contributors. The code base is pretty rich, but this doesn't give us enough information about if this is good or not. GitHub, they have this really cool thing called insights, and it gives you an idea of the health of a certain package before you integrate it. So let's click on the insights. And then from here, we could get graphs that tell us a little bit about the health of this project. So as you've seen, I mean, recently there's nothing being pulled or merged into this project. Community standards, they don't have a security policy. So if there's some certain vulnerability or such, they don't have a way where you could report that vulnerability. So that's kind of weak. If you're building that into your company and there's a vulnerability, you're risking basically losing all of your customers' data because you don't have the security in place in the lower levels of the project. You're building layers and layers. So one of the blocks fail, you might, ruin your empire or ruin your big tower, and you don't want to do that. So security is a really big aspect of it. We'll be talking more about that in the future videos, but let's look into the commits, for example. That gives you kind of an idea of how people are contributing code to this. So while this loads, I'm going to show you something else which tells you the health of a certain package. I'm going to copy the name of the package and then I'm going to search for it. And this has something called package health score. So what they basically do, they check the important things like how many people commit to it, their vulnerabilities, everything. They give an overall score for a package. So this package health is less than 50. You don't want to stay away from that. That's not a good package. And you can see their popularity over time. You can see if they're maintenance, if there are any maintenance, their security practices, and so on. So you could use this for any JavaScript package that is publicly available. You could use this, highly recommend. Now you see here the code frequency, basically that in the start there was some traction. Green means code being added, red is deleted. So whenever you're green, you're adding code. So you're probably adding new features, you're developing and so on. So you can see here that this project is quite old, January 2015. It's some old tech, and then basically it died off here for a couple of years. And then here there was a big spike, and then here was another big spike. So code frequency, maintainability wise, it doesn't look like very promising. It kind of died off here and before 2020. So I wouldn't use this project at all, right? It's a dead project. It's not going to be maintained. This is not what you're looking for. It is made up by a company, but it looks like the company maybe moved on. You could do some further research and get the reason for why. But let's look into the good example. So let's look into another project called TipTap. It is also a rich text editor. I saw it in the list. Let's look into their insights and code frequency. So you see, this is consistent. There's always new features being added, and they're actually removing a lot of code. This looks like a good graph for me. Let's look at the community standards, if they have any security policy. They do not. It's kind of interesting that they do not. They might have it on the README file. I know that this company is well known, so let's look into who they are. TipTap, developer kit for building collaborative apps. It's actually a YC company, so that's interesting. They have built it on top of 1,800 dependencies, so if any of them go wrong, then they are responsible of updating that. That's kind of a lot. You're basically triggering that into your code base if you're gonna decide on using this. And then let's look at the contributors. How many people are working on this project? There are 2 that have written most of the code. This one has left. This one has left. The biggest contributors have left, and new ones have came. This guy is still working, and they are very consistent. So that looks good. But the main people that build the project, they've left. So that's kind of interesting to know why. You could basically click on their profile and see what they're working on now. And maybe they moved into a different role, but them leaving is kind of interesting observation. And this guy, he has his README. He has that he's currently working and maintaining TipTap. That's a good thing. Using the tools that GitHub gives you, you can kind of get an idea of who the people are that are maintaining this. If it's a company, it's a good thing. If it's some certain individuals, you want to kind of be careful. Let's look into the overall rating of the first website I show you. So TipTap. And it says here that the health is kind of weak, right? And I kind of agree with this. I don't find the health of this project super high. I think it's okay, right? Considering that the 2 main creators have left, that is kind of not good. Basically, this is the package we want to be looking into. TipTap/core. So if we check that /core, we can do some search. So if we check this package, which is the TipTap core, now this website is npmj. This is the repository for most open source code on JavaScript. So we could use that. And then you can see here that you have a link to the repository. So from here, you could find it. Let's click on that. Now we are into the correct place. So this repository again, go in the insights and we can check the community standards. No. What's happening here, which is kind of difficult to see, this is a mono repo and they have the packages, and underneath here they have different packages. So it is not one certain package, but it's multiple ones. And here you could find all of that information. So here we will be able to find the core of the app. And this is what we should evaluate when we are looking into this project. Very nice breakdown. Main packages looked healthy. The main repository hasn't been updated recently, but that's not important. Let's look into one more example. I saw here in our AwesomeList that this is the successor for Draft.js by Meta. And, when you're building with a framework backed by Meta or backed by Google, you have pretty good chances for this to be maintained for a couple of years, like 3-4 years. And they usually have some SLAs on how long are they going to maintain this. They don't do it just for fun. They're probably using it themselves. And Draft.js is another one I see here. So this is a JavaScript rich text editor framework for React. So again, React, most of the web is using React today. And who are the developers of React? That's Meta. So your chances of going with something built by Meta that have built React is really high. I will maybe check this out. Lexical. And I see their logo. I see that is underneath the Facebook big boys repository company. So that's really good, right? It means, you have a company with how many employees Facebook have? Thousands, right? How much control do they have? Tons of control. So yes, you want to go with something that they built probably. It's battle tested. It's good as long as that they don't do the tracking, right? So since it's open source, again, we have full visibility to change everything, but we probably don't want to do that. We just want to do as little maintenance as possible. Let's check the Lexical on the health scores. And we can see here that this package, which is the Lexical/React, it has really good health. We can click on it and get the breakdown of if there's good maintenance. So the commit frequency is good. That means they're constantly pushing code. That's something you want to commit to. This is a good thing. There's some good maintenance being done to the project. There are a lot of open issues, open pull requests. Last commit was just 7 hours ago. This is good. And we see here the community, which is kind of like the reason you want to go with something many people are using, is good. There's 370 people. When it comes to how much code are those contributing, you saw that on the graph. If you go on Insights and you go on contributors, you can see that most of the code is being built by this and this person. And then the lower contributors, maybe you're just adding like a feature or a plugin. But for most people, they're not contributing that much, right? So it's mainly the maintainers that in this example are probably paid by Meta that are doing most of the work for you. And we can see here that this guy has quit. He started it. I'm kind of curious where they have went to, but somebody has picked up the slack after them. So this is good. So this guy went to Vercel now. He's building the next gen Vercel. This is cool. I respect that. So he's not very far away from the ecosystem, right? So this is good. So I gave you some good tips on how you can find projects. We talked about AwesomeList. We talked about how you can use the insights, the contributors. Now you have a few things to think about when you are choosing a project. I gave you an exact example, which is a rich text editor. We are actually open sourcing our own text editor that we use at Meadow Social. And the reason we did this is because we're going to be there for a long time and we want the community to help us build this. We want the community to use our product. We want many people to use the hundreds and hundreds of hours of code we spend on developing something. And then again, what we started with is Lexical, which is a project I showed you here. So we're building on top of Lexical. One last thing I want to show you, which is Lexical is built on top of dependency graph, 4,000 other packages plus. So this is how it works. This is how the dependencies, this is how open source works. You're building on top of each other. And if one block fails, then everything fails. This is development for you. So if you're thinking of open sourcing your code, I think it makes sense at the end. We're all building on top of each other, right? And then you get the community, a big community that is building on top of this code. So you are kind of like not maintaining it alone, but there's other people using it. So if they run into problems, they will let you know, and then you guys could fix it together. So the community aspect is really nice. You get extra security because, GitHub gives you more features when you're open sourcing. The second thing is if you're building with the same tech as what developers are using right now, it's probably easier for you to find talent, recruit it into your company, right? So if you're building with something like, I don't know, like Rust, right now. There's a lot of developers that want to use Rust. So I highly recommend open sourcing some parts of your project in your company because it just makes sense. All right. See you in the next one.